Well, becoming a physical therapist was one of the worst financial decisions I've ever made. Welcome to Harsh Life Humor, where we say life sucks, laugh anyways. My name is Kelly, and today I am going to discuss the cold, brutal reality of life in a way that lets you laugh through the pain. Because therapy is expensive, but YouTube is free. So, a little bit about myself. I just turned 29 12 years ago. I also acquired one child, gained 25 pounds, and accumulated enough bad decisions to qualify as a life coach. Now, at one point in my life, I was considered pretty smart. As a child, I was in the Gates program. In high school, I was in honors classes. I graduated summa cum laude from undergrad before getting my doctorate in physical therapy degree at age 26, somewhere between 3 and 15 years ago, depending on who's asking. So naturally, you would assume I'm intelligent. You would be wrong, because at 22, I did one of the stupidest things a kid can do. I got married. Thank you. I've been happily divorced for 3 years now. And honestly, divorce was probably my first profitable decision. Now, my second worst decision was spending $150,000 on a degree that makes less than $100,000 a year. Now, at one point, I was considered pretty good at math. So I've developed a little, financial formula. If your degree costs more than you make in 1 year, you don't have an education. You have a subscription service with no cancel button. To put this into perspective, I have already paid over $100,000, and I still owe, wait for it, $135,000. At this point, I'm pretty sure my loan balance reproduces while I sleep. And because I care deeply about young people making informed decisions, or at least avoiding my mistakes, today I am going to tell prospective PT students the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God, because apparently nobody else is going to do it. Now, before becoming a PT, I had a very specific idea of what physical therapy looked like. I got hurt playing sports in high school. I went to PT. The therapists would occasionally check in on me while I exercised, and the rest of the time they spent in the break room eating brownies that a patient had brought in. And I remember thinking, wow, I want that job. Turns out, there are significantly less brownies than advertised. In fact, had I known the actual brownie to student loan in ratio, I might have become an electrician. Another thing that I assumed was that patients would be like me. Young athletes, sports injuries, post-surgical rehab, motivated people trying to get back to the things they love. You know, the fun patients. Instead, most of my day consists of dealing with chronic low back pain. And every evaluation begins exactly the same way. Well, back in 1956, sir, that was before Alaska was even a state. We're gonna need the abbreviated version. Then, after hearing the entire history of Western civilization, I spend 23 minutes massaging an old guy's ass while they explain how gas used to cost 17 cents. This is not what the brochure showed. Now, that might be okay if the job came with great money or tremendous respect. Spoiler alert, it comes with neither. Despite spending $150,000 on a doctoral education, patients still ask me things like, so did you have to go to college for this? One patient genuinely thought it was a weekend course. A weekend. Imagine spending 7 years in higher education just to have somebody think that you learned everything between Saturday morning and Sunday afternoon. At that point, I should have just agreed. I should have been like, yep, I learned it right after basket weaving. Now you might be thinking, well, at least doctors make good money. Again, you would be wrong. Insurance companies reimburse the same whether a PT has a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctorate. Which means the healthcare industry looked at all of our extra education and said, that's adorable. No. Now you might be thinking, okay, so the money isn't great and the respect isn't great, but surely things have improved over time. Absolutely not. Back when I was in high school, PTs made okay money. The problem is they still make exactly the same amount of money. Everything else, however, doubled. Housing, doubled. Groceries, doubled. Daycare requires a second mortgage. Student loans, somehow still increasing despite my making payments. In fact, the only thing that hasn't gone up is PT reimbursement. It's like the insurance company looked at inflation and said, we've elected not to participate. And to make matters even more exciting, I live in California. Now, California is beautiful, okay? The weather's amazing, the beaches are gorgeous, and every month I pay approximately $4,000 for the privilege of continuing to exist here. Now, I'm going to be painfully transparent with you. As a physical therapist, I bring home about $5,600 a month after taxes. Now, according to financial experts, your housing costs should be about 30% of your income. Well, my mortgage and utilities are roughly 75% of my income, so I'm already off to a strong start, right? Then, according to the 50-30-20 budget rule, 50% of your income should go towards your needs, 30 towards wants, and 20 towards savings. Well, my needs are approximately 112% of my income, and that's before food. Now, apparently, society thinks children should eat. Now, I think it's more of an expensive hobby, but my son tends to disagree. So, after housing, student loans, daycare, car insurance, gas, utilities, and all the other exciting responsibilities of adulthood, there is exactly $0 remaining. Actually, there's less than zero. I don't have a budget. I have a hostage negotiation. Every month, I sit down with my bills and ask which one is willing to blink first. That is why almost every PT I know under the age of 40 has a side hustle. Or 2. Or 7. Personally, I'm up to 7. So if you've ever wondered why so many healthcare providers have Etsy shops, YouTube channels, rental properties, online courses, consulting businesses, and enough side projects to qualify as a small corporation, now you know. The other alternative is marrying rich. Now, I tried marriage. The return policy was terrible. So now let's talk about the most common argument people make. But isn't it rewarding? Yes, sometimes it can be. Sometimes you genuinely help people. Sometimes somebody walks again after surgery or gets back to doing something they love. Those moments, they're great. Unfortunately, those moments account for approximately 12 minutes out of my week. The rest of the time is, so have you done your exercises? No. Okay. Has your pain improved? No. Okay, well, will you do your exercises this week? Also no. Fantastic. I'll see you Thursday. Many people have chronic degenerative problems, which means they don't get permanently fixed. They get temporarily less angry. Then 6 months later, they're back. It's like seeing old friends, friends who refuse to listen. I've had patients come back so many times, I know more about their grandchildren than I know about some of my own relatives. And every time they come back, they say nothing works. Meanwhile, their home exercise program is sitting untouched in a drawer somewhere underneath takeout menus and expired coupons. Now let's discuss the schedule. Because if flexibility is important to you, then run. Physical therapy is about as flexible as a concrete sidewalk. Patients are booked weeks in advance, sometimes months. If you get sick, congratulations! You now have 18 people whose day you just ruined. I once got sick in the middle of an evaluation and left the evaluation halfway through to go throw up and then go back to the evaluation. Nothing quite builds patient trust like, your therapist will be right back. Violent vomiting noises from down the hall. Okay. Where were we? And parents in the audience will understand another challenge. Schools seem to schedule things with absolutely no warning. Parent-teacher conferences? Tomorrow. Field trip forms? Due today. Special assembly? 2 p.m. Cool! I'll just move the 16 patients I've had scheduled for the last 3 weeks. No problem. And because clinics stay open late for people who have normal jobs, you'll usually find yourself working until 7 p.m., which is great. Except for some reason, daycares seem to think that parents should want their kids before then. Now let's talk about productivity. Because healthcare executives have come up with a revolutionary new business concept. What if PTs saw more patients? There we go. Years ago, PTs spent 1 hour one-on-one with patients. Today, however, many clinics are trying to squeeze in every possible minute into the schedule. Documentation time gets cut, patient numbers go up, staffing gets reduced, and somehow everyone acts surprised when burnout increases. Now, my favorite part is the documentation. You get to spend all day treating patients, and then you get to spend all evening documenting. And then you get to spend all night dreaming about documentation. At one point, I wondered if I was a healthcare worker or a professional typist. Now, some clinics have gotten so desperate for revenue, they've started selling everything. Braces, foam rollers, supplements, special gadgets, magic rocks. Okay, maybe not yet. Give it time. Eventually, a clinic manager somewhere is going to discover healing crystals and call it an evidence-based intervention. Now, after all of these years, I've shared this information with countless PT aides. I've explained the debt, the reimbursement, the productivity demands, the paperwork, the lack of brownies. And they still apply to PT school. Every time. At this point, I think PT students are like people joining cults. You can show them all of the warning signs, and they'll still be like, yeah, but my experience will be different. Okay, good luck. I'll see you in 6 years when you're explaining to your own aide how student loans never die. So to all the prospective PT students out there watching this video, if you're still interested after all of this, then maybe PT really is your calling. Or maybe you simply haven't been paying attention. Either way, I wish you the best. And remember, life sucks, laugh anyways, and for the love of God, before you take out a student loan worth $150,000, make sure there are enough brownies.